This is We the Sales Engineers Podcast, show 225.
Welcome to We the SEs Podcast, the show for sales engineers by sales engineers with your host, Ramsey Majaba.
What's up, SE Nation? Welcome back to another episode. In case you were not aware, I am an immigrant. I immigrated from Lebanon to Canada back in 2006. Didn't have a lot of options in Lebanon, so I figured it's a good thing to do to just move to Canada. And I moved. I thought I was brave, but since I moved to Canada, I've had opportunities to move elsewhere outside of Ottawa, where I live, within Canada or outside of Canada, the US. And I had not taken those just because, hey, I have my life here. I want to take care of my family here. Today's guest really didn't need to move anywhere, but you will see that he followed what he thought would be a good experience, just moving for the sake of exposure to other things, which helped him in his career. And he's worked in startups, he's worked in big companies, and he can differentiate the two. So we talk about a lot of different things. One of the main things we focus on this conversation with my guest, Kenneth Kutyn. I think that's how I say his last name. Kenneth, correct me if I'm wrong. We talk about we all, as sales engineers, and he is a sales engineer, we all have problems within our organization, not human problems, but hey, we have problems that we could solve either through software or whatever. And he was running into a similar problem or a problem within his work, which he decided to solve through software, led to a side hustle. And now we talked about we're SEs, we're all creative people and we want to do things. So I just wanted to dig into his experience about starting a side hustle, the challenges of balancing both his job and his side hustle. So I really enjoyed talking to Ken. It was a great conversation, in my opinion, at least from where I was sitting. I really had fun talking to him. So I hope you guys enjoy the show. I hope you find it useful. Let me know what you think. And if any of you is thinking of starting a side hustle, I would love to know what's stopping you, or what it is and what's stopping you from actually starting. So put it in the comments below, or the show notes. Yeah, put it in the LinkedIn comments and the YouTube comments, wherever. I'd love to know the answers to those two questions. Let's just jump into the show. How are you doing, Ken? Welcome to the show.
Hi, Ramsey. Good to talk to you.
I'm excited to talk to you because you and I are on similar paths, not necessarily doing the same thing, but similar paths. Now that we have that teaser out, who are you? What are you doing here? And you sound Canadian, but where are you?
Yeah, I grew up on Vancouver Island, just off the coast of Vancouver. But I moved around a bit since then and now based in London and working as a sales engineer or similar roles for a little over 10 years now.
So how did you get from Vancouver Island to England, which is another island? Now that I'm thinking.
I guess I just like islands.
Yeah.
I had a chance. I was working at a small company, 15 people after university, kind of in a sales engineering role, but for civil engineering software. So building design codes and finite element analysis. And we had one of our resellers in London end the contract, and my manager, the CEO of this 15-person company, asked if I wanted to go to London and hire someone to do my job there. And my wife and I are recently married, and I kind of said, to my manager, you know what, we're up for an adventure. How about I just go there and hire my replacement to stay in Vancouver? And it was a win for him, I guess, having someone you know on the other side of the world instead of someone who's new to the company and harder to onboard. So I moved around since. A bit of time in San Francisco, a bit of time in Amsterdam, but found ourselves back in London again.
Okay, that's pretty cool. What did you study in university?
Yeah, so I studied civil structural engineering.
Civil structural engineering. You ended up working as a sales engineer for to sell to civil people, engineering people?
Yeah, basically. I mean, like most people, I didn't know sales engineering was a thing. I remember in university thinking, I'm not the smartest person here, but I hope there's a job for people who can talk and communicate. I don't know what that is, but I'm kind of banking on that. Nice. And sure enough, it was a company that made software, for doing physics simulations, basically, of loads on buildings and bridges. And so they needed someone to do, well, small company, tech support, sales, customer success, training. And the part I enjoyed most was really the demoing and helping people get started. And I came to learn later that was sales engineering.
Nice. Well, I'm looking at your picture on LinkedIn. That seems like an older picture. You look more mature now, at least with the beard. So,
that's probably 7 years. Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right. So you decided to take a chance. That's a big chance. First off, you're working for a 15-person company. It's not like it's already a risk working for that kind of company, at least as I see it. Mm-hmm. Is that right or wrong?
Different kind of risk. I mean, I was fortunate to have a great manager who put a lot of attention onto my career and mentoring me. And the benefit was that I was doing 5 jobs. So I got to try a lot and learn a lot. The downside was I wasn't getting especially good at any part of it because my day was so varied. And that's when I ultimately decided to leave that company, was for a chance to get more specialized in a sales engineering role where I thought, okay, now I can focus on picking a craft and getting good at it rather than being a little bit good at a lot of things.
What do you mean by 5 jobs?
Like I was doing tech support, I was doing trainings for new customers, I was doing what we'd call customer success, and a little bit of sales and a little bit of sales engineering.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So my experience when I talk to people who are sales engineers in the civil or mechanical aerospace world, that means they're in sales. Their title is sales engineer, but you were a sales engineer because you sold software, but did everything related to customers. Like you just
everything related to customers. Exactly. I don't know if you get big enough if you go to an Autodesk or something, if they split out the role more, perhaps. But yeah, at this small of a company, that's exactly how it worked.
Okay. And you moved. And how did it feel to just be doing pre-sales?
It was a really good feeling. I remember that was when I joined Oracle. And I remember just going into a meeting where all of a sudden I had 10 people on the same team as me working on the same thing, and we could share tips with each other on how to demo a new product. And it wasn't all on my shoulders to figure out the entire go-to-market motion of a new tool. That was an incredible feeling. Like, wow, we're a team of people doing this. These are people like me that I'd never really met many of before.
That's interesting. Yeah, I mean, when I talk to new SEs, like a lot of them want to go to startups. But do you really want to go to a startup as someone who doesn't have pre-sales experience? And like, they don't know what's in store for them. They don't know that they're going to have to figure out how to go to market. They don't know that there is no SE process and they are going to have to create it. And it's good to start with a big company. There's nothing wrong with a boring big company because the role itself is not boring.
Yeah. No, I think that's a really good point. And I spent about 2 years at Oracle. I think that was about the right amount of time, certainly not where I'd want to work forever. But I always tell people it's a great place to spend a bit of time. There's so much training available, internal training, and so many opportunities to learn from smart people around you and network. And yeah, when you're ready to, you feel like you've got that foundation, you're ready to move on, great, go for it. But no harm in starting with that kind of foundation for sure.
I mean, Oracle has like a pre-sales enablement team, not sales enablement, pre-sales enablement, which is, great. Most companies don't have that. So, all right, but I'm looking at your LinkedIn. You went to the UK and then back to San Francisco and then to Amsterdam.
Yeah, there've been a couple moves for various reasons, usually a combination of career and looking for some adventure and I guess for myself and my wife, once we'd tasted life in Europe, we really liked the ability to go to weekend trips, to not have a car, to be surrounded by the history and the culture and such. So San Francisco, like Oracle, great place for your career. Really enjoyed it, met some amazing people. But for the quality of life and everything, we were kind of looking forward to getting back to Europe. And that's when we pulled out our criteria and we thought, okay, what cities in Europe have a good airport? They speak English, they have a tech community, they have work-life balance, they're affordable. And Amsterdam is just kind of the top for all of those things. It was between Amsterdam, Berlin, and London, and we decided on Amsterdam, and we're really happy with our choice. Yeah.
But you've been to, like, you worked in Berlin for a while, or is it?
No, didn't know Berlin and didn't know Amsterdam that well either. It's been once for a couple nights, but
No, but since then you've worked in Berlin?
no.
Oh, okay. Well, still, that's a lot of things. So you've been working as an SE, and you kind of, based on our last conversation, you kind of noticed some weaknesses or some needs that SEs have. What did you see?
Yeah, I mean, it kind of goes back to your point that a lot of companies, A, don't have pre-sales and enablement, and B, don't have much of a budget to take care of the pre-sales team. They just assume, whatever we throw the AEs will be fine for the SEs as well. The SEs will figure it out. They'll make their own messaging. They'll build their own decks. They'll train themselves. So we get good at that, right? We forget to complain sometimes and ask for a little help. So yeah, I guess what you're asking about, basically I noticed that every time I was working on preparing for a customer meeting, was a very similar labor-intensive process of preparing the right pitch deck. And that's because we had a couple products we sold, we had a couple different markets we sold them into, a couple different types of buyers. And I was going and finding the right slides from 4 or 5 previous customer decks every time, constantly keeping them up to date. And so I built an internal tool, we called it Deck Builder, where we basically, I used just the Google APIs to go and start with a template deck and then filter out the content I didn't need and add a customer logo, add some names, drop in some other placeholder text. And to be able to do that with, basically a tick box exercise. This is what I want to show to this customer, hit the generate button, and you get your slide deck in 30 seconds instead of copying and pasting for 20 minutes, half an hour every time.
I want to clarify something. So you have a full-time job, right?
Yeah.
You're married. I don't know if you had kids at the time, but married at a minimum. And you need to learn the product that you're trying to sell. Mm-hmm. Usually that's enough to keep people busy for 2 full-time jobs. Why did you decide to take on this project? Like, was it that important?
Yeah, I guess it was. If there was one thing I could say was missing from the sales engineering career, it was the feeling that I was building something and that I was being creative as well. And I love the sales engineering role. I love how it's opportunity-based. You're always trying something new. You're always meeting new people. But to have the benefit of being able to, in a sales engineering world, still build up a product based on the firsthand experience I had, that was kind of something too good to pass up. And they always say if you want to build a product or a startup or something like that, you're best off building for yourself, building in a world you know. If I was going to go and try and build accounting software, I wouldn't know where to start. And the chances of me being able to build anything half decent would be pretty slim to none. But here I had a real problem that I'd solved for myself. I'd seen it used internally at the last company I was at. And so I thought, there's a good chance of this succeeding because I've already seen it succeed in the limited context. So it seemed like it was worth the investment in terms of time from that point of view.
All right, but like when you started it, you start with the intention of selling it or to other customers, or is it just for your own use?
We started as an internal tool entirely. So I built it partially in my free time and partially in company time because it benefited in the company. It was internal.
So where did you find that free time? I guess that's my question. How did you manage your time in such a way that you had time to do your job? And I'm looking at your resume. You were a lead. You were not just an SE. You were also a team lead in some places, and you basically were doing a good job. Otherwise, you wouldn't be given that role. So how did you have time to do both?
There's something about writing code. Doesn't matter how good you are, it's super addictive, right? And once you get rolling, and I'm by no means a software engineer, just hack together things here and there. It's really rewarding, and so you keep finding time for it, I guess. And it's life's busy sometimes, but it's nice to be able to throw a couple hours here and there at a hobby and get something out of it, I guess.
That's funny because I guess if you're going to be addicted to something, be addicted to something.
Yeah.
That's good. And how did that affect your career within that company? Did you get positive feedback? Did they fight with you?
No, got some great feedback, because I started with it as being something for sales engineers, and pretty quickly realized that our professional services team had the same need, our customer success team had the same need, our pre-sales strategy team. So we launched the same tool for 4 or 5 teams within the company. Even the co-founder was using it. He was kind of leading up one of the product teams at that point in time, and was using it for his meetings with customers to get feedback. He was using it to generate architecture diagrams and such. So got a lot of positive feedback. Yeah.
Nice. And okay, did it benefit your career in in terms of promotions or team lead positions or anything like that, or was it?
Hard to say. Right? Hard to say. I got promotions at that company, but I don't know if it was directly because of this.
Okay. It's just interesting that it didn't hurt, probably.
Yeah, it didn't hurt.
A lot of people are worried about doing that because it might hurt their career, but mainly because you started it for the company that you're working for. And
yeah. And I think, as a sales engineer, you always have these side things you want to work on, whether it's some new messaging or a document that explains something or a tutorial video, right?
Yeah.
And that always gets second priority to work with customers, prepping for meetings, POCs, right? RFPs, whatever it may be. So yeah, this was the same. It was a second priority, but in times when things are a little bit quieter, covering European customers over the summer when everyone's on holiday, you find a few hours at work to do this kind of thing. And having managers who were supportive of it and trusted that you had your priorities in the right place, and they would happily then support you to work on any of these kind of side project things that were work related.
And you've since moved companies, right?
Yeah, so left that company, started at Amplitude at the start of last year, and that's when I kind of spoke to a couple of colleagues who'd also left the previous company, and we realized, wow, we still need this product. There doesn't seem to be anything like this out there. And so that's when we started building it from scratch as an external standalone thing.
So one of the big things that a lot of SEs, that's my thought, I could be wrong, want to do something like what you're doing. Not necessarily the same tool, obviously. Don't compete. But they might have their own problems. Like I don't have that same problem that you have, but I have a million other problems. And doing it on my own, did you learn? You were a civil engineer. How did you learn to code to begin with?
Yeah, I mean, it was already part of my role. Was I took a JavaScript course, for example, because our product was basically a JavaScript tag that had to be loaded in customers' websites. So lots of questions about loading performance and how do we recommend adding this tag? How do we integrate it with other tools that are on this page, like Google Analytics and stuff? So I already knew I had to learn a bit of JavaScript and HTML and such. And then, I hacked the first version together myself in JavaScript. And I guess for people who are wanting to do something similar but think they don't know, you just got to start somewhere. There are a lot of even no and low code platforms out there which are getting better all the time, which can get you to that prototype phase, if nothing else. And then where we are now is that, one of my former colleagues who's more technical than myself, and he's a wizard with React and Next.js, he's done the bulk of the development on this standalone version that we've built. So you come up with an idea, get it as far as you can yourself, and you never know whose attention you'll get to kind of help you take it to the next stage and fill in the skills that you're missing.
Nice. And in terms of partnerships, how did you guys agree to work with each other now that I'm assuming each of you are a different company and everybody has their own crap to deal with, generally speaking. How do you make sure it's part-time, it's a secondary objective, or you have your job that you're being paid for? How do you make sure that you're accountable to each other and doing the work?
It's a good question because it's never going to be equal amounts of work. That's kind of why it worked, because we started with that conversation. Are we all in agreement? This is this is a secondary, tertiary commitment after our careers and our families, and we all have things that come ahead of that. And because we were all kind of in the same boat in that regard, at least expectations were set early. And actually, we had one of our advisors or mentors said that more startups die because of suicide than homicide, right? Everyone's focused about their competition and such. But more startup teams need to have that conversation internally, like, how much of a priority is this to ourselves? When are we going to take that next step and turn it into a bigger priority, if at all? What would be the trigger that would make that happen? And if people are in different minds about that, then that's when the conflict occurs.
So you've been doing this for almost a year part-time, like
yeah.
The external tool. What's it called, by the way? Plug it, please.
Still called Deck Builder, deckbuilder.io.
Deckbuilder.io, so people should check it out there. What are the biggest challenges within the group of people? Is it two other people that you're working with?
Yeah, there are three of us, exactly.
So what are the set of challenges, whether between each other or externally, that you're seeing?
Yeah, it's humbling because you build something for someone like yourself. So you think you know how it should work, what it should do, what people need. And between the three of us, we have quite a network of sales engineers and account executives who we think are our target user. I've talked to tons and tons of them, given them demos, given them hands-on time, get some feedback. And the challenge is, because they know you, they all say, "Oh, we love it. It's great. Totally get it." And then you say, "Well, great. It's yours. It's free. There's a free plan. Try it out." And then a lot of them go quiet and don't really use it much, right? And so that's probably one of the biggest challenges. It's how do you get honest feedback from people you know, or people. It's a natural human tendency, right, to want to please people and want to say, "This sounds great."
Well, okay, here's what I see, which is a great point. It's like, I have it, you gave it to me, right? Mm-hmm. And I said, "Oh, I need to do all that stuff with it," and I just don't have time, right? Like, I want to do it. I think it's a great idea, and whether I can or not, that's a different story. So the question is, what if I paid for it? Would I be willing to? Would I be obliged to put in more time? Would I pay for it?
Yeah,
I guess that's the question that, because I am also running the SE hotline, and I started off by jumping on calls with hundreds of SEs and SE leaders. "Hey, this is interesting. Do you want?" It's like, "That's an amazing idea. Perfect. All right." And then a few months later, I launched it. It's like, "All right, I launched it." Crickets. Now that they need to pay for it, it's like,
yeah.
Like,
no, you're absolutely.
Go ahead.
Yeah, you're totally right. I think that's super valid feedback, and exactly a phenomena that's happening. And you have to try and figure out, well, how do you test something before you actually take money, right? If you're selling a product, then they say, have a landing page, get them to enter their credit card details, and then say, "Sorry, it's not actually ready yet," right? But you validate them that people would pay for it. One interesting quote I heard was like, ask questions that even your mother would have to give you an honest answer to, kind of how you word a question. So I don't know if I can think of a good example, but you can do like a negative thing, like say to someone, I don't think this would actually work for you. It doesn't seem like it's relevant for your job. Let them correct you, right, and tell you why. Tell them why you're wrong. So that's a habit to build. And yeah, in terms of like, you're right. When we built this as an internal tool and got a ton of engagement, one thing that was critically different was I was the admin. I managed all these template decks, and people could just generate decks quite quickly and easily. Now that it's a standalone tool and we're trying to get it in the hands of different companies, you need someone to be that champion, to be that admin, and to put in the overhead time before they get any benefit from it to set it up properly.
So I'm spitballing here because we're having kind of
fair enough.
What, like, instead of jumping on a call with someone, can you like ask them ahead of time, like, "Hey, can you send me like 2 or 3 decks that you might use?" And then you can build that kind of demo for them on the back end, and then, hey, it's for you to use when it's all said and done. There's a lot more work on your end.
No, I think it's a great idea. That's one thing we're exploring. I'm imagining we could have an onboarding flow, and something we're working on developing right now, onboarding flow, where it says, "Would you like to set the template yourself or have Deck Builder support do it for you?" and then it just sends us an email and sends us their deck, and then we set up the template and hand it back over to them. So there are a couple options where we're kind of going to try out and test and see if they get some more adoption.
Okay, that's pretty cool. I mean, yeah, that's cool.
It's a lot of trial and error, right? No one's going to tell you what's going to work. You just got to try it.
So here's the thing that's interesting, at least for this podcast. You're becoming the SE, the salesperson, the product marketing, the product owner, like at least between the three of you, you're all becoming that. So how are you seeing the difference between being an SE and now being a salesperson?
Yeah, and I think that's what I mean when I say it's super humbling that you think, well, I know a little something about B2B sales. I know a bit about what sales engineers need, and you still hit brick walls here and hit brick walls there, and you got to go and ask for help from people who've done something differently than you or have a slightly different role than you. So I mean, I love the role of being, say, a product owner, and it's a constant. You're constantly learning the lesson that you got to stop listening to yourself and go listen to your potential customers, because that's the trap of knowing the market and knowing the world that you're in, is you think you know best, and you got to keep going back like, nope, it's not about what I think would work, it's about what the market tells me is actually what people need. That's a good lesson to learn.
That's so funny, because we were talking about like for Google versus Microsoft. We had that discussion, and then I sent out that survey because I'm curious. In my mind, it's like 90% is going to be Microsoft. I know the market, right? We all use Microsoft.
Yeah.
50-50, right?
50-50.
Which I was very surprised with. And that kind of verifies what you were saying. We think we know the market.
Yeah.
We assume we know the market. And then we ask the questions and look like fools when.
Yeah.
What do you feel like is the best? What do you like? Which role are you enjoying the most as part of being the founder of your company right now?
Yeah, well, as you know, as it's small and it's a side project, our dream and the trend is to go for product-led growth, right? We wish we could build something, few LinkedIn posts, and it would catch on, like a Dropbox or something. That's the dream. And you try and build things into the product to encourage people to share it with their colleagues and to try and get some of that free adoption, as it were. So that's kind of what the focus has been on so far as a product manager, to figure out what to build and to get an MVP that looks polished and stable in people's hands, and then use that to learn from. So that's why, I mean, it'll probably always have a free plan, but that's why we've definitely started in that approach, is because we want to just get it in hands and get feedback and learn. And yeah, I mean, even if I look at Amplitude, where I'm working now, obviously a very different size and stage of company, but the co-founders there alternated through positions, right? The founder took over sales for like 6 months or a year and just went super hands-on with sales because wanted to understand it inside out and wanted to just have someone who cared about it so much leading it. And then once they got it into a place where it was kind of stable and they figured out a sales process that worked for the product, then they hired someone and handed off. And then did the same thing with like marketing, and the different co-founder was overseeing finance for a year. And obviously we're not there yet. We'd love to have those kind of problems, but yeah, I guess as a founder of a small thing, you've got to do it yourself, do things that don't scale, then find ways to automate or outsource or delegate once you know what you're actually asking someone to do.
So is it possible to have the founders of Amplitude be your mentors? Like I don't know how big it is. I don't have a perception of Amplitude and its size, but since they've done that, I mean, you're learning from them, but from afar.
Yeah.
Is there a chance of doing that, like having them being your mentors?
Yeah, potentially. I mean, right now one of our mentors is one of the co-founders of Optimizely, where we used to work when we worked on this product. So he saw I mentioned Pete Kuman saw the internal version of it, and was really excited when we were building the external version because he personally got value out of it and was happy to kind of give us some guidance along the way. And he does a lot of startup consulting, so has seen many people go through different journeys, and that's been really valuable insight he's provided.
Nice. It's what's been, like, we talked about the challenges. What have been some positive things that surprised you? Like, yeah. I guess that's the question. Positive things that surprise
Yeah. I mean, there's nothing better than logging into like the session recording and just seeing someone who you don't even know log into the tool, spit out a deck for their meeting in 30 seconds flat, and use the tool in ways you never even expected. So people have been using it for example, like translations. One of our users generates decks in 2 languages, and so now they can spit out the slides in the right language because they just have different chapters set up. Super cool. We never thought of that. I also replied to a tweet one day on a whim about, I think they just said like, what's a project you're working on? And I explained Deck Builder. And someone in the freelancing community retweeted it. And what never occurred to me is that people who are in freelancing and contracting have to frequently pitch themselves to get customers. And they're using a pitch deck about their past project experience and some reference customers and quotes. And so it's super relevant for that audience as well. And that's not a market that I know. And so never expected that was something we should potentially pursue. So yeah, there's so many unexpected positives. Maybe the last one is just the range of interesting people you meet, both in the sales engineering realm and in like the maker, builder, founder world, who are just so open and so happy to help and network and get to know you. And it's a really cool excuse to reach out to people like yourself and just say, hey, let's chat. I'm working on this. I'd love to learn what you're working on and see if there's some opportunity to kind of collaborate one day.
Did you feel confident in reaching out to anyone, like someone like me? Do you have negative self-talk before doing that, I guess?
I guess not so much anymore. Maybe when I was 23, I would have. But nowadays with LinkedIn, you can get a message to anyone in the world you want. In the worst cases, they don't reply. And yeah, there's been so much positive feedback that it's been there's not been much reason to hesitate when everyone's just kind of generally happy to help. I talked to people at Demo to Win, showed them the product. I was chatting with Peter Cohen of Great Demo last week. I've been reaching out to like startups in the CRM world, like Close, which is a CRM designed for salespeople. Everyone just loves to chat and hear what you're working on and see if they can help.
It took me a long time to get there for me personally. When I first started the podcast, why would anyone want to talk to me? It took me a good almost a year. Even like I reached out to John Kerr and he said yes. And even after that, I'm like, why would anyone talk to me? It's like, well, wait, John Kerr said yes. Why wouldn't anyone? Like, if I can lead with John Kerr or Peter Cohen, they reached like when we talked. So, but it took a while. It wasn't easy, even after. Like, I don't know what would you consider success for a podcast, but I've been around for 200 episodes at least. So at least I haven't quit, right? So
no, good for you.
Yeah. So that but the negative self-talk sometimes is still there. You think about that. And I'm glad that you don't. I'm kind of jealous right now. Is there any experience that bothered you about this whole thing? Like, for example, in my previous company, they tried to shut the podcast down and I had to leave the company.
Wow.
I don't know if you have a similar example, but is there anything that this project affected you negatively that people should learn from?
Not so much yet. Yeah, no, it has been generally positive so far. Like I said, there's always things that get you down. Like you just expect more people to adopt it sooner and to get the value when you've seen the value yourself. So that can get you down for sure. But I think, because we've done this as a labor of love in our free time, none of us have made huge sacrifices in terms of time with our families or our careers in order to build this. Then I don't have regrets or bitterness if it doesn't go anywhere at the end of the day. If we never make it profitable and find people don't want to buy it, I'll still feel like, well, I met some cool people. I learned a little bit about coding, a little bit about marketing, and I'm going to move on with my life and try again one day. And that's fine with me.
It's a net positive. That's amazing.
Yeah, definitely.
In terms of being an SE, how has doing this, or has it helped you in any way to be a better SE or a worse SE, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, it's super relevant in terms of at Amplitude, our primary user is a product manager. And the software is built around helping people build better products and understand their users. So getting to play this role while those are the people I'm talking to every day about their challenges and what they need to understand in terms of their users, definitely gives me a lot of empathy and a lot of understanding for what they're going through and what they're trying to achieve. So been a positive from that point of view as well.
Nice. Right. I feel like it's time to move on to the not so fire round. Again, this has been a great conversation, and I have a million questions that we can just keep going. But I want to ask the not so fire round. I want to take some time to ask because I usually ask 4 questions. Today it's going to be like 7, mainly because I want to take. It's the same question, but from the SE side and from, I don't know, the side hustler side or the founder side, whatever.
Sure.
So what do you love about being a sales engineer?
I have to say the variety and meeting cool companies doing industry leading things every day. It's amazing when you get to work on a brand that you've known for your whole life, and all of a sudden you're there at a table with them, helping them figure out how to launch the next product, how to run an experiment on this new flow. And you're just dropped in there alongside them. That's really rewarding and really satisfying.
That's a good answer. What about being like as a founder of a part-time organization, side hustling? Let's just call it that.
Yeah. I guess a couple of things I touched on already. The people you meet is really exciting. And that moment when you see someone new pick up the tool and actually use it, it really feels like a point of validation, and that's great.
And okay, so how many people do you want to reach by the end of like next half?
Yeah, I don't have hard targets in place because our focus has still been on learning. So more qualitative, and how can we improve onboarding and improve the time to value and that sort of thing. And we're looking right now at maybe even bringing someone else onto our team who has a stricter sales focus and has more experience in the sales development world to help us get in front of more people, because we think that'll ultimately help us, well, maybe make some sales, but it will definitely help us learn faster. So I don't have a hard number, but that's kind of how we're viewing the next stage of growth.
Okay. Well, all right. So for folks listening, anybody can go in right now. As of right now, the time of recording, this will be out in several weeks. But as of right now, anybody can sign up as long as they have a not a Google email, but a work email using Google. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I mean, you can sign up with Gmail as well, but presumably you won't have your work slides in your personal Google Drive. So ideally, you use Google Workspace or Google Drive at your company, and then you can sign up. And you just need a template deck based in Google Slides to use as a starting point.
Okay, so then with deckbuilder.io, anybody can sign up. They can invite a friend as well, I'm seeing. So make sure to invite your friends. The next question is, what would you change about the sales engineering role?
Yeah, I've seen a lot of variety in the sales engineering role in terms of at some companies, the sales engineer is almost leaned on because they're a lot more experienced and tenured than the AE, and they end up doing a lot of jobs. And like you said, they don't always get that support from pre-sales enablement. And then in other places where you have a stronger sales team, then you can kind of really focus on the sales engineering role, which I think I prefer a little bit. Something else, there's this trend, and actually this is something my manager often talks about too, is this weird thing in sales engineering where we think serving enterprise customers is better than mid-market or SMB. And I think that's kind of a shame that that's come to be the perception, when it can be a lot of fun working with small digital first companies who are growing fast and are trying crazy ideas and are often more sophisticated than the traditional enterprise businesses. And it's too bad when people kind of get stuck in the mindset of, no, enterprise is bigger, so it's better. And I'm at a stage in my career where I don't want to work on small companies anymore. I personally like the variety.
Okay, that's fair enough. All right, like the way I work with also big companies, but mostly a lot of it is post-sales. What would you see the main difference between working with enterprise versus working with small to medium business? Why would one prefer one over the other?
Yeah, I mean, in enterprise, where I spend most of my time right now, just kind of natural, right? As you spend more time in sales engineering, you tend to move in that direction. The deal cycles take longer, and they're a lot more involved. And often there's a lot more, at least in the world I am now, there's a lot more technology and processes in place. So for example, with Amplitude, one of our enterprise prospects likely already has a data warehouse, 2 or 3 or 5 analytics tools that they're already using. And they've built a data pipeline, they've got some tagging tools, and they're trying to figure out where Amplitude might fit in that world. And that can be really fun, rewarding too. You can talk to a lot of stakeholders. You can build a lot of momentum internally around people seeing a better way of doing things. And that's great. It might take you 6 months and quite an in-depth POC. And so that's kind of rewarding from that point of view. But then you go the next day and talk to a 500-person company that is digital first and has never done things in a legacy way. And they're a lot quicker to make a decision, but they can also be more demanding because they've been already using some great new technology, and they've already invested a lot in their own, in their own data science resources and such. And that's quicker moving, but can be more demanding in some other ways. So it's just different. I couldn't say one's better or worse, or I enjoy one more than the other, but they certainly have a different feel to them.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I feel from my experience, I feel like you can be a little bit more consultative with enterprise companies, but more transactional with small to medium business, which is why I feel like SEs have a bigger impact on the enterprise. Not that they don't have an impact, but it's more rushed, it seems like.
I do appreciate that in enterprise you get more time, right?
Yeah.
For example, I ran a proof of concept where we met with, I think, like 10 product managers at one company and heard every one of their concerns, and were able to address them individually. And in an SMB world, your manager would be saying, "Why are you spending so much time on this?"
Well, it's funny because you get to build relationships, better relationships when you're in enterprise. In small to medium business, you're basically doing the entire sales cycle in probably a month, or like 3 meetings: discovery, demo, close. How are you going to build the relationship to actually get all the information? And which is very challenging. Like, people think it's easy to be a small to medium business because you just do the demo and leave, but then they don't need you. They just need a recording. You still need to be consultative in a way. All right.
Yeah, all about your credibility, right? How quickly can you build that up in limited exposures?
Yeah. In terms of like from being a co-founder of your company, what would you change?
Yeah, wish I had more time on it. It's always tough. You have so many ways you can spend your time, whether it's pursuing partnerships, trying to market things, trying to write blog posts, trying to outreach for sales, or doing software development. And it's hard to prioritize, and you always have more ways you could spend hours, for sure.
Yeah, all right. Well, we'll leave it there because we can talk about that for days. Is there a book or resource you recommend for your fellow SEs or your fellow startup founders?
For fellow SEs, I took Demo to Win when I was very early in my career. Like I said, had a great first manager who believed in it, and that was super foundational for how I pitched a product, how I demoed, how I handled the room, how I handled objections. And we don't always follow all the structure in every meeting, but the lessons there really stuck with me for a long time. So for people who haven't done that, I always advise that if you're not going to do the workshop, read the book at least. It's a great starting point for any sales engineer.
Yeah, I agree with that. Right. Last, what about startup? Like, is there a book or a resource you recommend for people who want to overcome the fact that there's too much work to do and not enough time?
Yeah.
Is there anything?
I'm a big fan of Tim Ferriss, and all of his books are great, but obviously the 4-Hour Work Week is one, kind of the startup space. Not that that's necessarily the goal for everyone, but there's so much good content in there, and focusing on what's important, what actually drives value, removing the things that waste your time, automating, saying no to people. That one's also pretty foundational for building on top of.
Nice. All right, last question of the day. This is just one question. It's about you. Is there anything you're working on? Is there any habit you're working on today to improve in your personal or professional life?
With sales engineering, it's a cycle, right? You get good at one thing, and then by the time you've tried to go and master something else and something else, then you've got to go and top up on the first one. So yeah, I find that I'm constantly kind of reevaluating, how am I doing discovery? How am I handling my stakeholders and my champions? How am I, forecasting and communicating internally? So I don't know if there's a single thing, but it's a kind of a constant loop, and kind of top up all of these skills as I go.
Okay, cool, man. Well, this brings us to the end of the show. Where can people reach out and connect with you if they want to?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn. It's the best starting point. Otherwise, on Twitter, at Kenneth Marshall. It's my middle name. And otherwise, Deck Builder, of course. Hit up the support button. That'll go straight to me.
So you're the support engineer as well. Okay. Well, it's great talking to you, Ken, and I look forward to talking to you again. Thanks for coming on.
Great. Thanks, Ramsey.
And that brings us to the end of the show. Thank you, Ken, for coming on. Thank you for sharing your experiences. Thank you for working on a solution to a problem that many people have. So I appreciate that. I'm sure many people do as well. It's as I started with the intro. Once I came to Canada, I felt like, hey, I didn't want to leave. I'm good. I've went through my adventures, and I want to stick here. So it's interesting to see someone like who lives in Canada, doesn't really need to move. They have a good career. They're working. They're doing a good job. Decide to go see the world, I guess. Well, I guess Europe instead of the world, and fall in love with Europe and stay there. And then build their career based out of that. So I found that interesting. Let me know what you guys found interesting. Let me know what problems you're trying to solve as well. Maybe I can help you. And I can definitely help you through the SE hotline, where I coach SEs to get better as SEs. And it's not just, hey, this is how you demo. It's a lot of it is, this is how you demo, but some of it is, this is how you do discovery. Some of it is, this is how you work with your account manager who's giving you a hard time. Some of it is, this is how you get promoted. So, or get a job as an SE. So check it out, WeTheSalesEngineers.com. The show notes for this show are at WeTheSalesEngineers.com/show 225. And the information about the hotline are all over the site. So check it out. I guess that's all I have to say for today. Thank you for coming on. Thank you for listening. And I'll be signing off.